Did you see that?
I did.
It's time for Connect This.
Love it. I'm just impressed you know how to plug in an Ethernet cable. Just,
I got almost the first try.
Yeah.
Welcome. We got a lot of fun topics today to talk about what's going on in the world of broadband, and we're going to do it with our most famous and beloved crew. We'll start with Doug Dawson, the guy behind CCG, and specifically Pots and Pans by CCG.com. Welcome.
Well, welcome. I'm glad to be here today. I think we're going to have a really good show because Travis is on fire today. So.
Absolutely.
Two cups of coffee will do that. Let's get it done.
Yeah, and even if Travis's whole body wasn't on fire, it sounds like his knee might be on fire.
Oh, so much. But I actually like the fact that Kim still looks confused about the Ethernet cable being plugged in. So
I was going to wait till my introduction.
Sorry, Kim. Yeah.
Welcome, Kim McKinley from UTOPIA Fiber, where she's the chief marketing officer, and that is the least of her talents. So remarkable.
Well, it is true, but I need to know, Chris, first of all, Doug, I felt like you were just making an Academy Award speech when you got introduced. And second of all, Chris, I'm really worried about how long that took you to put together.
What's important is that we got there.
Everything I do sounds like an Academy Award speech.
I was actually aiming for dramatic tension, but I guess that failed. Yeah. Trevor Cardis,
yes, sir.
My good friend Trevor Cardis from USI Fiber in Minneapolis. Welcome.
All right, and you know what? Because it's going to be riddled all over social media tonight. I want to be the first. Okay, there we go. Everybody's going to have it posted. Every time their kids go back to school or they vote, it's got to be just inundated for a day. So there you go.
I did vote last week just in case I tripped on the way home from something and wrecked my knee.
Yeah. That would be me. Yes. Yeah. And then I had to do an MRI. Wow, that was an experience. And then watch YouTube for the next hour trying to figure out how an MRI works. So that is the nerd I am. So
it's alien technology. It's totally magic. Let's start off with, we're going to jump into a number of different topics here. We're going to talk about what's really happening at the ACP as a bunch of us realize that the number is actually being drawn down less rapidly than we thought and why that is. We're going to look at what's happening with Starlink and their cap. We're going to talk about some other wireless stuff. We're going to talk about mapping and what's going on. Here we are in November. We don't have any maps yet, and all we know is that we're supposed to lower our expectations. Key question for the audience: is it possible to lower our expectations around mapping? We're going to talk about a couple of other things, but we're going to start it all off with a quick aside about Comcast and $100 internet, which was a prediction that Doug has made and Travis has been hung up on for ever since he made it.
Well, we now have it. Comcast has the best marketing people in the United States in this industry because in the Northeast, they turn their biggest weakness into money. And so they have terrible upload speeds. And so now for only $25 a month, they will give you like 30 megabits of upload speed. And so you have to pay for something that you should already be given. And what they're not saying is everyone else is going to get slower internet speeds.
Well, is that the case?
Yeah, I mean, of course. When those folks go faster, everyone else is going to.
Well, if they add capacity, right? So I mean, like we were down for an hour or 2 hours. My folks are on Comcast in a different part of the city. They were down briefly, or they're replacing the amplifiers or doing whatever they need to do out there to like be able to change their split so they have more upload capacity. Isn't it possible that we'll just see that they're just going to monetize that extra capacity and the rest of us will be okay?
Well, no matter where they set that capacity, when they give some people priority, the other people don't have priority. We'll be talking about that more with Starlink, but the way they're going to give them the faster speeds is a priority connection, and that by definition interferes with other folks. So.
Yeah, and it's like what, $35 a month or something like that for extra?
$25 a month.
25.
So and remember, their base price was already at $92, so we're way over $100, Travis. We made it.
Well, first of all, I'm just more impressed that consumers are aware of what upload speeds mean, because for people to even pay it and them to market that way, they feel like that there is a demand for that product. So kudos to Comcast and my fellow marketers out there for taking looking for a weakness and capitalizing on it. I don't think it's the right way to do this, but it is an ingenious way to do this.
It is an ingenious way. Give them credit.
Give them credit.
Wow. And Shayna says there's a new study that's coming out. Comcast pay the highest prices in California for internet, more than Charter, AT&T, and Frontier. I would not have guessed that necessarily. I would have guessed Charter probably.
I'm a little overwhelmed.
No, they're always more than Charter. The one that they're probably not higher. Cox is the highest, so they're probably not higher than Cox.
Guys,
I don't know if Cox is in California. So.
Cox is in a little bit of the San Diego area, but I think it has very few customers in California. Go ahead, Kim.
We need to talk. We've had 2 people comment in the first 6 minutes. I mean, that is like double our usual attendance. So
maybe Tuesday's our day.
We're on fire today. I'm telling
you. Either it's Tuesdays, maybe it's election day, and we should have more elections. Like,
I think it was Travis's I voted button. I think.
Yes.
People were on social media and they were looking for any excuse to get off social media and do something else, and we're providing them for that.
Yes.
So the Comcast thing, the other question I had about that, you have to take like the whole X-Fi system with their wireless.
Yeah, you also have to buy their $14 a month modem. Yeah.
Which is, I find really frustrating because I actually think this is where Comcast is just going to monetize our data more, right? Because if you're inside the home running the wireless system, if you own the Wi-Fi units, this is why Amazon and Google got into that game by buying companies that were doing it. You have tons of information about what's going on in the home. You have, information that otherwise you would not get about what devices people are using, when they're using them, and perhaps other stuff.
And you don't get that with their own modem. Yes, that only benefits them, not you. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you can still put your own. You can put your own wireless system in and turn theirs off. You just have to pay for it.
Yeah, that's what I was planning on doing.
But Kim, I would ask you, because I know for us the number one issue that we run into is in-home Wi-Fi. So I think what they're really trying to do is obviously it's margin, but it's also to control the user experience. Because really the only complaints we get is if they've got, I'll never forget the $20 router somebody bought from Goodwill and was just complaining how poor their fiber service was, and they just couldn't put it together that buy cheap, buy twice, right?
It was probably from Wi-Fi too, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I didn't even know it could probably plug in. I get why Comcast is doing the whole router thing and like our modem and controlling that experience. I totally get it. But you're having this balance in this marketplace where people want to be able to buy their own equipment and not be forced into doing it. So I have a provider on my network who offers it for free for a certain product, like this is even for the managed Wi-Fi, but they're saying you don't have to have it, but we're offering it to you so we can help you with those solutions. So I think that's where Comcast is going wrong in this, of forcing it down your throat and saying you have to pay for it.
That I just want the $14 price is really outrageous for a $100 box.
Yeah, I do want to note this. So no puppet strings, but I'm going to defend Comcast again. I'll say that their devices that they are leasing are at least good now, right? Remember, we used to have to lease the worst set-top boxes that barely worked and just were awful. Now, at least we're leasing devices that provide a better experience. So that is in their favor, at least.
I will give them to Comcast as well. They have been criticized heavily about their customer experience for decades. And I think that they are very much trying to work on that. And I don't think a lot of people want to give them credit, even if it has improved at all.
Oh, I've been saying that ever since Brian Roberts made it a priority. Although I think at this point they've probably hit their limit. I can't imagine they're going to make it much better. I think I've had multiple good experiences with them, and like I've had other people relay good experiences to me with them, but we still hear lots of negative ones. And you can't provide customer service at the scale that they operate with the legacy that they have and the old systems. You can't make it as good as Travis is going to make it. Or UTOPIA, supposedly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I want you to know, Travis, that if they keep talking good like this about Comcast, you and I are going to start a Comcast drinking game.
Yeah. Hang on, I'm ready. I got my shot glass ready to go.
Now let me tell you how much I love CenturyLink, the other competitor to USI Fiber.
I like them both, actually. They do a nice job.
Right? Don't change, right?
Yeah. Don't change a thing. You're knocking it out.
So I wanted to update people on we talked before about East Carroll Parish in Louisiana, where they were getting screwed by the cable company, which is Sparklight, which used to be Cable One, which changed their name because everyone that ever used Cable One has had a miserable freaking experience with it, and so they have another year or two before they'll have to change away from Sparklight, as everyone has miserable experiences with them. They challenged a grant that was going to bring fiber to East Carroll Parish. The state then decided that Sparklight had not provided sufficient evidence that they actually were providing the speeds that they claimed and ruled against them. And since then, Sparklight has what's it called when you oh, the words are great today. I got too much sleep last night. They appealed it. And so it's not yet resolved. So quick update on that. We'll have more on that as we're able to, but this community that desperately needed better connections, needs to have a choice, is getting screwed still by Sparklight, which from what we've heard behind the scenes, they're going to be taking this road show on the road, and we're going to see in a lot more states where Sparklight is doing this sort of stuff, likely a mix of fraudulent versus real claims of uploads. At the same time, go ahead.
And delay. That's all.
Delay. At the same time, they did pop $50 million into Ziply Fiber, which I think is kind of interesting. Like, you're like, our service sucks so much, and we operate in areas where we don't have any opposition, so we're not actually going to put a lot of money into upgrading our system, but we are going to invest in a company that does know how to provide a decent service, supposedly, in the Northwest. So, that's interesting. Or maybe it's not.
That's the first bit of silence that you've had on this show since it started.
Never taking a breath again. That's it. Let's talk about Starry, because this article in Telecompetitor just popped out by Joan Engebretson, and I've always enjoyed Joan when she covers things, which she does regularly. I just say that because there was in other places too, but I focused on Joan's story, just noting that its share price has totally tanked, and it's like basically ripe to totally fall apart. And I felt like we just talked about them, and we're talking about how well they were run. And I know that they tried to go too big too fast, but I'm also curious if this is a story of just like wireless, which we see again and again, which is these massive hype cycles around certain kinds of wireless. It's going to solve all their problems, and then they just can't pull it all together. Or is this a story of growth? Is this a story about wireless? Is there a combination?
This is a story of plain economics. And before the show, I quoted $50 million a month. They're burning $50 million a quarter. So they're just losing money. I believe because they went public and they're investor backed, that I think they were being pushed to grow very fast. They only have 60 or 70,000 customers, and you can't burn 50 million a quarter with that kind of losses. I think that they simply are running out of money. Everything that I read about them is their product's good. People like them. They offer symmetrical speeds in the 200 megabit range for dirt cheap. And so there's nothing to be said bad about them as an ISP, but they have really good customer service. It's self-provision. People love that. I mean, they have all the good things going for them.
But okay, so
they can't overcome lack of money.
So why is it that they only have 60,000 customers? I mean, the thing that we hear from people who want to prioritize wireless over all else is that it's just, you could build this so fast. Why aren't they able to build it that fast?
Well, they're first off competing in metro areas, so they're not competing out where they have a much better chance of getting everybody to sign up. Their big market right now is Columbus, Ohio. The entire, there's like 12 cities around Columbus. It's that whole area. To only have that many customers there's got to be 2.5 million people in that area. So it's really not a very good take rate. So they're not getting their message across.
It just seems like a bad business model. It looks like bad business practices more than anything. I mean, and you're going to see this in this industry, not just for them, for others. They're trying to go out there too aggressive, and thinking that like you'll build it, they will come kind of model. And it's not going to happen. And you have to look at this in a smarter way. I was actually having this conversation earlier. Everybody sees this like huge demand right now. So they're like trying to build and do all this thing so quickly. But they still have to look at the economics. It's kind of like how Travis is like, I'm going to build this much this year, build this much this year, and kind of looking at it as a slow progression and not trying to get to everyone like in 6 months. You're not going to make that happen.
Now, Travis, how do you maintain so much hype around Tortoise Fiber over there?
Hey, just slow and steady wins the race, right?
No, but so you have a habit. You for a while you were building out to like alternating streets, and that seemed like it helped to build the hype.
Well, that's the thing. It's fear of missing out, right? So you want to make sure that people, at the end of the day, Doug actually brought up with, or I think you did with Comcast. I mean, you have to over service people, and it's not that hard at a smaller scale. I mean, to do that with tens of millions of customers would be challenging, but service, be the ISP you want to be, which quite frankly is nobody wants to deal with their ISP. They just want it to work. And so I just don't find it hard to compete with folks. But I would say that we are starting to fall more in line with national averages. And the bigger we get, it's interesting. And I don't know about you, Kim, but it is interesting to see like year one, 30%, year two, 40, and then by year 4 or 5, you're at 50%. It does take time, where in the early years, man, you'd hit 50% by the end of year one. I mean, it was like, it was easy picking. It's getting a little bit more complicated nowadays.
Kim, you've had the benefit of multiple markets. Is that more of a big city thing?
No, I think it's a big city. I think it depends on the market. I actually I've had a lot of conversations about broadband lately, but I had this conversation yesterday of, if you're going into a rural area where you have a ILEC that hasn't done anything in 20 years and you're building out, you're going to get an 80% penetration rate within like 2 years, maybe even 1 year. But if you're going into a competitive area where the options are good enough, you're not going to see that uptake of 50% in year one. That's unrealistic. And that shouldn't even be put in the feasibility study. So like back in the day on Utopia's original feasibility study, which I found the other, like a year or so back, said that we would get like 80%.
Oh, yeah.
In year one. And that would never happen.
You can't even do the loops that fast. You can't put drops in that fast. But she makes an exactly good point. Travis actually made it. Since Travis has gone into the business, Comcast has probably increased their speeds 2 and maybe 3 times. And they did that without raising the prices. They raised their prices anyway, but customers are not as unhappy with them as they would have been 10 years ago. And so it's just harder to compete against. Mm-hmm. She just said it. It's all right. It's not dreadful. It's all right. So.
And we've said this before, the more subscribers on the cable plant that get converted over to Utopia or USI, the better the cable plant becomes.
Right.
So there gets to be kind of a contention point where it's more hassle than it's worth to people. I mean, luckily the COVID thing, I mean, I'll be the only one that says luckily COVID, but people were at home. And so they had time to have people come and do installs and whatnot. So we had huge uptake during COVID. And then, the whole thing in the rural area, you guys are right. The rural project we're doing, if you don't get 70% like right away when you open up an area, you're doing something wrong, because they've had nothing forever. And the hype is, I mean, when you come by to put in the mainline fiber and everyone's bringing you cookies and lemonade and like they're so excited. Hey, can we move our cars for you? Anything we can do to get this in? I mean, they're just tickled pink. When you do it in the metro area, they're like, don't mess my petunias or I'm going to call city council. It's a different take on the excitement level compared to what it used to be.
I don't know what you have against petunias.
I find that
disturbing.
Yeah.
He's never harshing the begonias. For instance.
Yeah. I only know so many here. Hydrangeas. We'll go hydrangeas next, right?
I just spent a week in Holland. I'm in Holland, Michigan. And first of all, amazing city. I'm definitely going back with the family, going to do some camping around that area and hanging out. But tulips as well. Big tulip town. Millions of tulips, apparently. Yes. Like 4 million tulips and like 2 million people will come see them or something like that.
Yeah, but don't blink. You'll miss them. They only last like an afternoon. So.
It's the oddest flower. It's the oddest flower that is out there. Now that we're on flower talk and on broadband.
Yes. There's a thing that popped up that I just want to throw out. It was kind of related to the wireless. And just want to note, one of the people who's regularly on me, as though I'm an anti-wireless person, as opposed to being a person who tries to take a measured balance on this stuff, was just saying, I said something about Starlink and how it was a necessary trade-off with wireless often when one has to has trouble with congestion and that sort of thing. And he tells me there's plenty of bandwidth available and getting 1 gig non-line of sight is here. And so I just wanted to ask you, Travis, because we talked about this with the, the other stuff. Is that 1 gig non-line of sight there for you?
Where's it at?
It's not here. I think this is.
Oh, you know, what's the signal? What's the SNR? What's the distance to the tower? Is the tower fiber fed? Is it symmetrical? It isn't going to be symmetrical because unless you have 2 radios in there. I mean, Josh, it's in the cloud. Now we do line of sight, 10 gig all day long. You know, that's like a slam dunk, easy peasy. But 1 gig symmetrical, non-line of sight. Shoot, I just spent all that money on that Tarvana stuff to prove.
I'm pretty sure that's what he's referencing. He's saying Tarvana is that.
And it's not here. And the 10 gig, and just to make sure we understand, those are really expensive radios. These are not for homes.
No.
What is the price for a 10 gig set of radios?
Oh, I want to say it's about $8,000 a link.
Yeah. So you don't do that for your house.
No. These are like rooftop to rooftop in like a downtown area.
Mm-hmm. Starlink is changing its approach in ways that I love to see, and just in the sense that, I mean, I'm not thrilled with bandwidth caps. It seemed like it would be inevitable, but the fact that they are exempting it during non-peak hours is something that we don't see from the cable companies, right? Like these ridiculous caps that the cable companies have when they should not be recording anything, at 1 a.m. against your cable cap because it ain't hurting nobody. The Starlink seems like it's taking a responsible approach here. We have a Starlink enthusiast among us. Travis, how do you react to this?
Well, I think any wireless technology is going to have data caps, rate limiting, packet shaping. It just has to. And I think people need to understand that, Starlink is just another wireless technology. So if it's a point to multi-point technology, you're going to need to do things to mitigate people that are sitting there torrenting 24/7 and choking up all the bandwidth. So I think it's inevitable. Packet shaping will be next.
I think the only controversy here is that when they first opened, Elon Musk said, "We'll never have caps." He should have never said that.
Yeah,
because the fact
technically they don't, right? I mean, it's not a hard cap.
They don't have a hard cap, but they slow you down. It was like, okay,
yeah.
And so the fact that he said that he would never do that. And I remember now he's only got 2,300 satellites, and eventually he says 30,000. They'll probably never get to that, but they're still going to have a lot more than today. All that really means is for today, for 2,300, he's starting to see problems.
Does anyone know if he ever got his heavy lift rocket going? Because that's the issue, right? They were supposed to be doing heavy lift rockets with much larger numbers of satellites to be deployed on a regular basis.
They've done a test launch with it. They haven't launched satellites with it yet, but yeah.
Because I thought that was like last year they were targeting to do that, and that was going to help them boost the number of satellites they had up there. And now he's distracted saving Twitter. Thanks a lot.
That one had some big problems, like an explosion on the launch pad and big things.
Yeah, because I think the Gen 2 satellites are too heavy for the current Falcon boost.
You know why I think he did it is because his PR right now is going so well. So he needed to put something positive into the press. I got something. This is what I can give you right now.
Right, but let's be clear here, Travis. How does this change your perception of Starlink?
Not at all.
You love it, yeah, right? I mean,
here's the thing. I like boring technology that works when you need it. And so far on the road, Starlink is miles ahead of anything else. And the new Starlink dish just arrived yesterday, which is even going to be better. So excited about that. So
you have to pay for the next one, or did they just send it to you for free?
No, I paid for it. Because, when Chris needs to connect this show and you're in the middle of nowhere, it better work. So.
And it has. We saw a definite difference when you were on Starlink. Travis, you were also sharing something with me about speed tests and wireless that I was not aware of.
Oh, this is okay. So Chris, I called Chris and I'm like, every one of these YouTube videos I watch from, I guess our competition, I don't know who they are, other YouTube shows where they talk about this. It's always speed test, speed test, speed test, speed test. And I'm not sure if these people understand that a lot of these networks that have packet prioritization systems behind them, especially in the wireless world, will prioritize speed test packets above all else to give the consumer a false sense of performance. So we're going speed test, but when you hit speed test, all the bandwidth you get, or the vast majority of it for that speed test, so that you feel as though you're getting what you're paying for. I think it's like one of the biggest shams in this whole industry, especially over wireless technology. So I called Chris, and I want to pose the question to Kim and Doug. If we were going to go out and buy a network, what would we be buying? Obviously, we'd be buying ARPU and EBITDA and all the financial components. But from the network standpoint, wouldn't we be buying the infrastructure, the facilities that are in the ground or in the air and the utilities? So if it's a coax network, or if it's a fiber network, we know we can upgrade those networks relatively easily. So I'm not sure why everyone is so focused on speed, especially speed test, when I think the tests are all invalid anyways.
Well, and just so you know, cable companies also have been rigging the speed test for years.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's just what they do. And so, yeah, speeds are important, but what they don't tell you is 100 megabit connection on a fiber network is far superior to 100 megabit connection on wireless or cable. And it's because of latency and jitter and all sorts of other issues. It's not the same thing. And so, you just can't, speed is only one of the things that matter. In fact, when it comes down to day-to-day experience, it's the least of the three. So,
well, at a certain point, I mean, I think you're saying that in the context of,
yes.
I mean, like once you've hit, like say 100 megabits or so, going from 100 to 200 is less important than having that higher quality of experience in other factors.
Yes. That's what
I think it's so funny.
Thank you for filling in the words. You're doing good today.
He is the host, Doug. He is the host.
He is. He's a good host.
I'm making those connections.
I think when I knew speed tests were hoax is when somebody showed me that they got 1 gig speed test. And I was like, no way. You have a 1 gig connection and you're getting a 1 gig speed test. Yeah, we know that speed
not
test.
over the open internet.
Yeah.
No.
I was surprised, and I assume it was an anomaly of the speed test, but I was running a speed test on a connection with a gigabit router, and at one point it claimed 1.2. When it's sort of bouncing around a little bit, and I was like, I don't think that happened.
So wouldn't we buy? If we were going to buy a network, would we buy a cable network over a wireless network and a fiber network over a cable network?
Of course.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I guess I posed the question to Chris. Isn't the mapping question, even though we're not there yet in this conversation, wouldn't it be more important to know what technology is there versus what speed you're getting?
The FCC is collecting that information. Okay. It's just that most of us aren't really paying close attention to that.
Okay. Very nice.
And my answer to Travis and Kim, I'm really interested in your thoughts on this particularly. My answer was that it's because government wants to provide this idea of being technologically neutral, because people in the government are very sensitive to being accused of picking winners and losers. There is an assumption that government, whenever it does it, that's wrong. Although we've picked winners in terms of like concrete and macadam over like dirt for roads. But nonetheless, I feel like the reason we don't focus on technology is because it would be inconvenient when dealing with government to be picking a winner when the thriving marketplace is providing alternatives.
So, okay, the role of government, Christopher, if you know this, is to provide, don't you like that I used your formal name? Is that they are supposed to do this for their residents, and they're supposed to make it financially feasible for their residents. So if you're looking for a solution, wouldn't you go for the longest term solution that best benefits the residents and long term for the community? I think you have to pick winners and losers in technology. I just think you do if you're talking from a government aspect, because it's not just you have to remain neutral. You're doing this for a reason, not just because you want to get in the internet business.
Right. So I think you're addressing what we should do, but would you agree with me that this is why we haven't done that? We've focused on speeds. When I say we, I think people in public policy more generally, because focusing on speeds allows us to avoid alienating anyone, because we're not saying wireless is not a good investment.
Yeah, nobody wants to piss off the people who are giving them money. I mean, you just don't. I mean, this is why these big companies and lobbying efforts are out there like they are, because you don't want to piss these guys off just because you want to stay in that middle lane. You're right. You want to stay in the middle lane, but behind the scenes, they're absolutely picking winners and losers. They're just not publicly picking winners and losers.
I like Chris's analogy of the road real quick. So out in, all around here, it's all asphalt roads, right? And they have to redo them every 3 or 4 years. versus the concrete interstates, they never do. So are the roads here are wireless roads, and we have to redo them every couple of years, and the government invested in fiber roads between the states. Is that what we're talking about here, Mr. Mitchell? So
I'm curious what Doug was going to jump in on it. So let's see what he has to say about it.
I was ready for my next Academy Awards. My blog tomorrow is about differences between fiber and wireless. So read it tomorrow. Pots and Pans by CCG.
I'm
It's
sure that's
already
the
written.
first time you've ever had this conversation, the difference between fiber and wireless. After that. Yeah.
Only here on this show is the only place.
No,
nobody else talks about it ever. Huh?
I mean, I think there are significant differences, but the thing that we agree whenever we're talking with people who are, who I think are the ones that we think of as doing the good work, right? We've had multiple people on this show who deal in both wireless and fiber, and just about all of them, just about all of them agree that we should be. There's other considerations, right? So if you're moving to an area and you can connect a bunch of people in 6 months to a year with a wireless connection, and then you're building a business case for connecting them with fiber over the next 5 years, that's pretty smart, right? We're not disagreeing with that. I think where we disagree is the idea of like whether or not government money should be spent on wireless when we're trying to build something for the longer term. And this is where I do upset people, because I consistently say, I think we should be investing in stuff that will be around for a long time. And I'll just say that, like, I mean, it's been a lot of years since FCC Commissioner O'Reilly, who I think really summed up the Republican position on this in Washington, D.C. He would always say, like, we don't want to give people Ferraris or nice cars. We want to give them a Chevy. And we've built like 3 or 4 Chevys for people in some rural areas, and they've never actually had a good car, right? Like they've always had crap internet, and we've overpaid what it would have cost to give them a freaking Lamborghini to start.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the really simple way to sum up what you just said. If wireless technology is good for 7 years, we need 11 upgrades by the end of the century. Who are you going to give the money to that you can trust to do that?
Yeah.
The fact is that just sounds incredibly unlikely that that's going to happen. So it's not a long. I'm not against wireless. I've been a customer of a WISP, but there's certain places where I think it's the best answer there is. But federal money is the question, not technology. So,
but I think we would all agree on this: is wireless is a short-term solution, like Chris said, to get the longer-term play of getting fiber in the ground. We should use it that way, but we don't. We just use it as this is good enough, and let's look for the next 7 years, and then let's readdress the problem and have the next tranche of money that's coming out because that didn't work. And these guys,
but these grants aren't aimed to do that, unfortunately. These are probably a once in a lifetime chance for big money, and it's not going to come back in 7 years.
So quick question regarding the grants. Does the FCC do anything on RDOF? I've had this question from a few people, like, the areas that Starry has defaulted on. Does the FCC take action? My answer is no. The FCC sits and waits and watches until it can figure out when it would be smart to do something with that money.
Well, all that happens with the Starlink defaults is they fall back into eligibility for the other grants. The FCC is going to do nothing.
Well, because the FCC was supposed to do RDOF 2. RDOF 2 is supposed to happen, but it's not, is what I'm saying.
Well, they're not going to do that in the middle of BEAD. That would be insane. So, yeah. And there probably won't be anything left after BEAD for them to do it. One of those 4. We'll see. So.
Yes, I think that's a big we'll see. And let's talk about something else we'll see about. Maps. So I was talking with my team.
That's a we'll never see.
Can we give Travis the award for the maps coming out in 2026? What I think was when he said they would come out.
2029, I thought he said.
I don't know.
Yeah. You know what? I think the issue with the maps is we have not spent enough money. What is it, like 90 million on these maps?
Okay, so I wanted to talk about that.
How insulting
did we address
is the
this?
map generator? That's all we gave them to work with. I mean,
I mean, it is a very challenging problem. But New York City, I think, has already put in 31,000 corrections, is the news article. And that's in New York City. I'm in New York State. I was talking to my team and I was like, okay, what exactly is happening with the maps? Because we're planning a 2-day event with a group of people in a rural area who are getting up to speed on broadband. And we want to tell them how they can be prepared to do the map challenges and things like that. None of us have seen the fabric. We don't even know what it's going to look like. We don't know how to like, how are we going to prepare to like teach these people how to do it? And I was looking at it and I was like, well, when's this coming out? And this, and I was like, we're the ones that are supposed to know this. But I figured I'd ask Kim and Doug because what is going on?
I've gotten a few peeks of it through my clients, but you can't see any big piece of the fabric. Only the ones that you're allowed little peeks for like this little square mile here, right? And so the fact is that if New York only has 31,000 corrections, that's actually a big success. That would be phenomenally good. What they're trying to do is impossible. That's an impossible challenge. They're trying to every 6 months map the location of every single household and business in the United States. I mean, the census people would tell them they're insane. They can't do that every 10 years with a whole lot more money than what they're spending. So their approach is wrong. It's a flawed approach that'll never work.
I think Travis is right. I just feel like if we give them more money, we'll figure out how to do
we're
it.
going to give them more money. That is happening.
We are, but we're never, yeah. Go ahead.
Why
Travis.
are we mapping places that are ineligible for these federal programs anyways? Get rid of that, and maybe there's a chance that they do these areas that are actually eligible.
Well, that's the problem. We don't know what's eligible and not eligible.
We don't know.
Well, urban areas are not.
Well,
no, that's the thing.
problem.
I think we'll find that there are, across the United States, there are millions of people within urban boundaries who do not have anything available, and we just didn't know that before.
I think that that's a bigger number than rural, is my personal opinion.
Ooh, do you really? Okay.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we've been lumping cities that if you live in this urban center, that you automatically have broadband. But it still comes down that these big companies have ROIs. And why would they build into some of these areas? So, yeah, I think it's going to be a big urban solution. But I haven't seen the maps. I've just heard. I feel like they're elusive. They're out there, but nobody's ever really seen them. There's like 4 people who are out there. But we'll see.
Even once you see them, correcting them is I wouldn't have the slightest idea how to go about correcting them. It's a mind-boggling.
I'm confused. I thought this is what the whole cable TV franchise agreements were all about for the last 100 years.
Well, they were, and they were largely successful.
But here's the reality in a city, and I guarantee it's in your city. When the cable companies first built, they got to a railroad track, and there were 7 houses on their side. They go, it's not worth it. They got to a cul-de-sac, like we can't get in there. There's a water hazard. There's a million little pockets. There's 3 apartment buildings that didn't let them in. And they never came back and filled those holes in. So all over the city, in your cities, there's a dozen of these holes or maybe 50 of these holes. And you multiply that times all the city, and it's a lot of people.
Sure.
They don't care about the franchise agreements. There's no way to enforce them, honestly.
So basically, this will reinforce the fact that the incumbents will get all this money, because who would build these 7 house pockets?
Well, you will, Travis. I mean, if you find out that, for instance, there's a number of areas that you're planning on building where, you could get some support for it. I mean, you might do it.
Oh, you're in the state of Minnesota. Minnesota is going to have an edge out loop policy, and that's where the money's all going to go.
Yeah, zero chance though, because you know what I've learned about these programs. The ISP is liable for everything, but the federal entity is not liable for anything. And what I mean by that is they're scheduled to pay is whenever they feel like it.
Right.
So, you've got vendors and suppliers and all these people and contractors that are doing all this work that are expecting to be paid. We go ahead and pay our half. We submit the invoice for the other half. When does it show up? Inshallah, and then you call them and they're like, oh, well, we're too busy working on these new applications to worry about the old one. Like, well, who do you complain to? Here's the moral of the story, everyone. Careful who you get in business with, or pretty soon you're mortgaging your house to keep your business afloat because the matching grants are not showing up. So just be careful. So, Chris, to answer your question on those 7 houses, there's zero chance I would apply for help. I'll just do it myself.
Well, and you're not going to go into this one area where there's competition all around you that you're only going to build these 7. Yeah. You have to have the scale, and you have to make the business case that you can get the penetration in the surrounding areas. That is the problem. We keep talking about competition and letting new entrants in the marketplace. You still have to make a business case, because the subsidies can help those 7, but you still have to get there.
Right. But so whether it's someone else that doesn't agree with Travis in that same way, who might go after that money, or whether it's a Comcast or an AT&T, like, this is how we're going to resolve that issue. We're just going to pay someone to build those, is my guess.
Right. Yeah. But I don't think that money is in these current grants. I think that there are a few states that will be. Most states are not going to give out money for that. So.
Well, I think that's where I would just say what Shayna had said, which is if the maps are correct, some of these areas will be eligible, and they will be required to build them out. Particularly in California, where you might have just DSL servicing some of these, they will be eligible, and the state will be obliged to at least have a plan for connecting them before it uses the money for other things.
And that goes back to your original question: when are we going to see that good map?
Yeah. So I mean, I just like
Mhm.
I'm despairing about the maps. And then we talked about this last time. For people who didn't see the show, I think we have an excerpt of it. I don't know if we made it available anywhere. If it is available, it will show up in the chat by Rye, I'm sure, with a link to our discussion about it. We had a great discussion on our last show with Dustin Loop about what states should be doing and how all of this freaking money is going out the window.
I need to ask you a question, Chris. So we've talked about in previous shows, how much of this money that's going to be out there is going to be used in a good way to connect?
In a good way. So we would say that money going to AT&T and Frontier is not in a good way for the purposes of this?
Sure. Let's go for that.
If it was 40% that was spent in a good way, I would be pretty excited.
And
So that's all of the electric co-ops.
If AT&T serves those 7 houses with fiber, I think that's
I don't understand why you would disqualify AT&T and those guys.
I would disqualify them because people hate their service. I mean, the fiber service does better, but like that's because they haven't yet had the 10 years of 10 pay increases and whatnot. I mean, like these companies are going to provide the worst customer service at a high price that's ever increasing, trying to squeeze more and more out. And this is why I get frustrated, is that a lot of local officials want to just give this money away thinking, well, we'll just solve this problem and then it won't be a problem anymore. Well, it will be. There's lots of people who have the service from the cable company that is unreliable. As Doug made the case previously, in these rural areas, if AT&T and Frontier aren't getting their monthly checks from the government, they very well may let the fiber rot to a point in which the network's degraded and it stops working. Like, this is not a binary of whether you're connected and then it's solved forever. This is something that we'll have to continue wrestling with.
Okay, but I have to ask you a question, and I'm going to give a credit to some of these city officials. How did they know? Like, we know because we've been in this industry, we've seen what we've seen, but how do these local officials, when they give this money to these incumbents, how do they know it's not going to be used? I mean, I think some of them give it in a very optimistic way, thinking that it will be used. I don't know. Like, I mean,
it's a really hard challenge for them because they give it out in faith because they assume that those folks are going to do what they say.
I think
we've seen the big companies not do what they say many times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think our expectations are too low. Like, I mean, how do they know? There's nonprofit organizations like the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. There's shows that we make available. I mean, like, what more do we have to do? The League of Cities has the National League of Cities, the state leagues. They tackle this in some ways. And there's an unwillingness. Like, at a certain point, and I would say that point is like 2017, arguably, or maybe 2020, where when you have your head in the sand on this stuff, it is your fault as opposed to just being a natural reaction.
I disagree. It's Travis's fault.
Oh, no, not my fault. I mean, when I talk to these cities, they genuinely do not have time to study this or research this or anything. Sometimes I feel like this hot potato got dropped in there.
Thank you, Travis. Yeah. Thank you for that, because that is the answer I hear. They don't have time. And what?
We don't have time. We don't have staff. Can we use some of this money to get more staff?
It's a prioritization issue then, right? I mean, they don't have time to do lots of things, and they find the time, right? Like cities didn't handle water systems, and then they did. They had to make the time and capacity, and they recognized that treating it seriously like a utility would create such enormous benefits to everyone that it was worth doing. And cities want to pretend that access to the world's information for businesses and for residents is something that they should outsource to a company that literally just sees them as a well from which they can drag profits as much as possible, when just basically squeezing as much revenue out of the town as possible. It's a terrible dynamic.
Yeah, but you got to go back and look at your water history. A lot of cities did a horrible job with water. Only when they got massive fines from the federal government did they even try to give good water. So that what people need is not necessarily the driver. Trouble with cities, they were literally at any given time, the city council is wrestling with 20 very difficult topics. If you just go sit through city council meetings, which I do a lot, it's unbelievable the kind of things they're asked to weigh in on every week. It's a thankless job. It's really tough. So.
Oh yeah, I agree. And we need to be respectful. But like we also have to have higher expectations, I think. Kim?
No, and first of all, I need Doug to have a better life if he's just like trolling city council meetings.
No,
Because
I have to I speak at a lot of
but yeah, no, I get it. They have a lot on their plate. They're not experts in this field. And I think it's like, there's a lot of resources out there. And I think it is that they don't know what they don't know and they don't reach out to get it. And they just make uneducated decisions and we keep wasting federal dollars. It's like a circular process, but I do give some credit that some.
Well, and you missed a step, and they have untruths whispered in their ear by the incumbents.
That is fair.
And listen, there's also a massive fail of philanthropy. Like, I mean, I think there's a lot of discussions about the role of philanthropy in this country, but one of the things that philanthropy has refused to do is wrestle with internet access. There's only a few large foundations that have made money available. Many of them have cut back on it. Others have never even tried it. People talk about this as though it's really important, but very few people write checks to get it done. One of the reasons that when people ask me why states have such bad laws is I'll say we don't have a Sierra Club or a Ducks Unlimited of the internet. There's no organized effort in most states to educate leaders and to give them, a different opinion on something than they hear from the big companies. And that is a failure of the people who have hoarded billions of dollars in the past and are supposed to be spending it in the public interest today. And that's why it's not taxable.
But
we're the only ones doing it. This show is the advocate.
Well, no, but I think it's a failure for this industry not to come together and unite in a singular message too, because we're divided of technology or whatever that we can't even come together as an industry. So why do we think that there's going to be people out there who create this one organization? It's very hard. I mean, it's very hard because we all believe something different, but I do think that we should unite so people can get behind us and support this mission going forward.
Let's talk about the ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program. What's that, Kim?
I said, that's sexy. Let's go.
Yeah. Let's move on to something that people are really into. Oh, we actually got some graphics for this one. Look out. I'm asking Rye to join on to walk us through us because there's and we want to give good credit. So Rye, why don't you start off with giving credit with who raised this with us in what we're trying to figure out.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Good to join you here. I'm going to add this to the screen. So, so the Affordable Connectivity Program has been going on for most of a year now, and we have been keeping an eye on how the money's getting spent and where to try to get a better idea of where to focus things like outreach efforts and where the friction points are, so that the money that's going out to help households pay for internet access can actually get to the people who need it. And so here's the front page of a dashboard that we built that exists at acpdashboard.com. And we've been looking at various ways of crunching the data so that it's useful for folks on the ground. And one of the things that's become immediately clear, or that has become increasingly clear over the last few months, and this has come from talking to folks at Free Press and elsewhere who are also doing deep dives on this data, Benton Institute, is that while
particularly Common Sense Media with Drew Garner, right?
Yep, and Common Sense Media, of course, yep. And so while the enrollment rates for this program have been continuing to go up, the usage rate has stayed very flat. So while the enrollment rates have been going up and up and up over the last 6, 7, 8 months, the usage rates, or here's a word that Chris hates, utilization of the program has stayed like flat since the earlier part of this year. And that's a problem because it means households are getting signed up for the program, but there's no money going out. We know there's no money going out the door to help them pay for internet access. So the Benton Institute did a deep dive earlier on this year at 30 metro areas. They were gracious enough to let us add this as a layer to our dashboard to see how those metro areas were performing compared to one another. And if you saw an earlier version of this, you saw enrollment rates were less good in some places and much better in other places. But when you turn off enrollment rates and turn on usage rates of the program, those numbers end up dropping in a big way. So you can see the graph on the right side. The light green, the totality of that bar, including the light green, is the total enrolled in the program, and the dark green is the subset of those households that are actually using the program. So you can see there are lots of places, Detroit, Baltimore, Atlanta, Washington, Philadelphia, where they've got enrollment rates that are above 50%. More than 50% of those households that are eligible for the program are enrolled, but less than 30% of the eligible program of the eligible households are actually using the benefit. So double-digit percentages just sitting on the books, not drawing down the bank account.
So
I need to ask a question about that. That means that they've made it through the application process, but no ISP's given them the discount.
Yeah, that's a good question. So there are all sorts of unknowns here. And if we had better data from USAC, we would be able to answer some of these questions. But at some point, it means at some point they were enrolled in the program and they remain enrolled in the program, but either got kicked off because a recertification process didn't go through accordingly, or they switched providers and didn't think to bring service over. Or you can see that Washington Post article in the bottom left recently. There's other like ethically dubious borderline fraud stuff going on as well in terms of on the provider side of things, getting people signed up, and then some of those households aren't going to actually use the benefit.
So this is one of those things I wanted to share, because not because we have the answers, but because we're really wondering what the heck is going on here. And when we talk to people out in the field, this is a surprise to them. When I talk to people from some of these cities and I say, have you heard stories from people who think they're supposed to get the benefit and they're not actually getting it? And they're saying no. So there's some major disconnect of, in some of these cities, half of the people who are eligible for the program, who have completed the eligibility and could you be using it, do not seem to be using it.
Some are far less than half. Look at Portland. I mean, it's way down there. That's terrible.
Yeah. So some of these places are really bad. Other ones, on the positive side, some of the Texas cities are doing pretty well. San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, they still are maintaining relatively high usage rates. It could be because those cities are just doing a much better job of getting the word out and educating people, to make sure they're actually using the benefit. It could
This
be
is where
You didn't point out something important from the first slide, that over half of this money is going to cellular data plans, not home broadband.
Right. Yeah.
That's in the lower right. The pie chart shows the darker color there is the mobile providers. I think this is where, I don't know exactly what data is available, because my RISE team in my program is the one that tracks all of this. But my sense is that it'd be interesting to know if we could have a simple data set from USAC that would tell us, for instance, what companies are involved. Because it might be that some companies, 9 out of 10 of eligible people who made it through eligibility are still having the service, like Comcast, I would guess. And whereas for some of the companies, it might be like 20% of the people who are deemed eligible are only taking the benefit now. And that would be helpful, but I don't think we have that level of granularity. Is that right, Rye?
We don't yet. Right. So that would be nice. I added this at the very end here. And so what happens is the ISP has to upload a snapshot in certain intervals for people for households that they want to claim the benefit for. And going forward, ISPs are going to be required to choose a claim code for households that are enrolled but not being claimed for the benefit. And you can see the list of choices they will have to do that. It would be nice if we had that data available to us so that we could see, like Chris says, at a provider level where the biggest deltas are and begin to address some of these gaps.
Have we seen providers drop off and not want to offer it or not even deal with the hassle anymore? Or
I know a few small ones who did, but not many. Yeah.
Kim, are you guys still doing it?
We don't do it, but our providers, we have some providers who are really doing it. And I mean, I haven't heard that they have a huge uptake in it. And I think it goes back to a lot of the marketing. It's how much effort do they really want to put into it for the return and all the hassle they have to deal with it. So
a question for Rye, is anyone doing a FOIA request for this stuff?
So I know a group of folks have gotten together to submit an ex parte letter to the FCC asking for more. There are folks organizing around this, including Common Sense, Free Press, and some other folks. So it'll be good to see.
But Kim's right. I think the issue of why the whole curve's not going up is I don't think a lot of the big ISPs are telling anybody about it. I mean, it's on their website and they make a big deal when they talk to congressmen, but they're not really pushing it. So, yeah.
I was somebody asked me yesterday about a low income program, and I said, "Do you know about ACP?" And this person's pretty knowledgeable. It's like, I have no idea. And so it's like, a lot of people who are not in this space again don't even understand what ACP is, and I think it's because you still like if you said ACP to me, it doesn't mean like I would understand that means affordable connectivity. Like, so yeah.
Well, Kim, I'm curious because one of the things I've been surprised at in the past is how, like, for instance, a county social services would
Mhm.
not be promoting the Comcast's Internet Essentials program because it would be perceived as using government to benefit a private corporation. And we all know that government never benefits private corporations. Let's just ignore the obvious. But like it's a legitimate concern, and I wonder. I have no sense, but I'll bet people at National Digital Inclusion Alliance do. I would hope that in a lot of places that the ACP program is something that is generic enough that if you're in dealing with WIC or if you're dealing with like Social Security Administration, like this stuff should be pushed on you. You should be annoyed. You should be getting those text messages that are that we're all trying to write stop back to right now, right?
I agree with you. I think it should be pushed out in every avenue, but it goes back to where is it being pushed out? I haven't seen it. I mean, I haven't seen anybody really advertise it, and maybe I'm not looking in the right places. But yeah,
Well, this is the advertising push should be starting now, right? Because National Digital Inclusion Alliance yelled at the FCC along with other public interest groups saying, if you don't have a budget to promote this, it will not be promoted. And then now the FCC is finally doing that. Another
Because
one of those.
We all pay attention to FCC ads. That's going to be very effective.
No, the FCC has a budget for other organizations to get access to now in order to promote it in different ways, is my understanding. Right? Definitely correct me.
Hey, Travis,
I used to be a detail guy, and now I'm not, and it's killing me.
Are you going to go after an FCC advertising subsidy?
Huh? No. The part that, Doug, you probably know this better than anyone. Are these companies' margins so thin that they have to go after these federal dollars for everything they do? Or
which companies?
Just in general, it seems like
But it's a very heterodoc mix. I mean, some of these companies only exist to go after federal dollars.
Right, but then
what did you say? What?
Forget. He's talking economics to you again.
Google it.
It's a lot of it's more. There's more variety in the number of companies than you would think. They're not all similar.
Big
homogenous.
Okay. I'm just curious because every time I hear this talk about, we can't do anything unless we get this federal program, I'm thinking to myself, there's a serious flaw in your business model.
No, the big ISPs have gigantic margins.
No, but they have to do it for the community benefit. That's why they're doing it, not because of the margins of this at all. It's that they want to have this, that they're doing all of this goodwill for the community. And I mean, that's why anybody's doing it. Nobody's doing this because it's because they're making any money. It's more out of the kindness of your heart.
I think the big companies are also leery that this thing's going to run out in less than a year unless Congress gives it more money, and they might not give it more money.
Well, that's one of the things, Doug, is that it probably won't run out next year at these levels because there's so much less money being spent than we thought. So, I can let Rye address that. Do you have any sense of how it's changed our projections, Rye?
Yeah. So, I don't want to say for sure the exact date that we think it's going to run out because, as Chris said, it changes based on how many folks are signed up. But we know that I think it's $270 million a month about is going out of that bank account, and I think there's a little over $12 billion left in it. And so, also as the the FCC outreach and education push ramps up, we'll start to see those numbers go up and up and up.
But we were expecting it to run out in about 2 years at a $450 million per month drawdown, I think. And now it's like, it's like 60% of that.
Yeah, I think we're out to April 2025-ish or sometime in 2025 or early 2026.
I was going to say, I think I'm glad to see the FCC has the same budget that for ACP as my glasses budget is every year.
All right. Can I ask a real serious question, though?
No.
If you must.
Look at this interaction in the comments. What show am I on here, by the way? Is this Mitchell's Connect This thing? Because man, look at all these people on here, and Deanne is
Mitchell's Connect This thing, as though people aren't tuning in for the three of you.
Yeah, Deanne's right. I mean, ACP's a pain. It's a pain for everybody. It's not easy to deal with. So. And for $30, I don't know if a lot of people want to bother. and then God forbid you get audited. Oh, there goes all your margin.
I mean, I know a lot of ISPs who just have a low price option and they're not bothered with ACP. They have a $30 option
Yeah.
for folks, and they're not about to go after this money. So
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the big companies, and I don't know that Kim would disagree with me on this, but like the big companies that all got patted on the back by the Biden administration, I think are doing it because of public relations. Because any chance that they can have to say, hey, remember us, we're not always bad. We're not terrible. Like you don't
Right.
totally hate us, right? Like
right.
it's a great opportunity for them to say, oh no, like we are doing stuff. And like for them to go to Congress and say, oh, I know people complain about us, but we're doing all this great stuff nobody knows. And that's why they do it, right?
Well, and I think that Shayna made a great comment of, like, she said she couldn't disagree with me more about that there is some money in this. Absolutely, they're making the money at the scale they are from these programs. But the hassle that they're dealing with, still, if they could get out of that and just go out and get those customers without the $30, they would totally do that before they would go through this program.
Yeah, and I'll just want to say also that, like, a quick rant on the economic system. Like, there are really good people at Comcast and maybe a good person at Charter who really care about these programs, right? And are trying to make it work. But the companies have a limit in terms of how much they're going to go down this path, because they have a responsibility to Wall Street, to their shareholders, to maximize their profitability, and so they are going to do that, and that means serving some number of low income households, but it will never mean meeting all of the need that is out there.
This is my chance to always remind you that the big companies don't have universal policies on anything. It's regional profit centers, and so one reason Cleveland may look so good there is the cable company there might have a guy who cares about it, and the other cities may not. There literally is that regional difference, and it's based upon the general managers of the area. So,
yeah.
I knew we couldn't get through a Connect This without some economic lessons from Christopher Mitchell.
I would like another big word or two, though.
I'm going to rewind and try to figure out what that word is he said.
Heterodox. It may not even be used correctly. Who knows? But it popped into my head, and sometimes things pop in my head before they pop out of my mouth, but not always.
I just looked up heterodox, and it says, ask Chris Mitchell.
Yeah.
See, the question is, Kim earlier said a thing about using my full name, and it's when people start using my middle name that I will be concerned that I'm in trouble. That's the signifier for me, not just the Christopher. Last bit as we're wrapping up. T-Mobile, giant poles. I suppose that should be maybe our next peekaboo. Rye may have one before we finish this segment, but there's photos in the New York Times about these big poles popping up, and some woman with crystals that's absorbing the radiation on her windowsill. But it's an interesting question. Some people were like, it's reasonable. Some people said unreasonable. Have you all seen these pictures?
Yeah, they're terrible. We had a first round of that when 5G was supposed to come out, small cells, because Verizon started off with these monstrously large towers, and they put the electronics up in the air, and they look like satellites on top of towers. And so they've changed. They moved all the stuff underground into vaults, and they made shorter towers. And so, this is a local fight. It's a local fight of city jurisdiction to be able to say no to cellular companies. The FCC rulings are all in favor of the cellular companies, but cities continue to fight very hard against it. And so it's an ongoing battle that's never going to stop. And it's not just about these towers. It's about everything that has to do with the aesthetics of its city. And so yeah, those towers are particularly ugly. I'm surprised in today's age, after all these fights, that they would do that.
Oh, they're all through my neighborhood in Salt Lake City. One day I was driving down the street, and I
those
said,
giant aluminum ones like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm glad they didn't put this in my yard.
How would you like that right at the end of your driveway?
Yeah.
These are
they don't have any choice, and they're just atrocious.
Well, if Kim wasn't wearing her glasses, I'd worry she'd run it over.
You can't say no to it because it's in the public right of way, which is the first 6 feet from the street. And he's like, "Yep, I'm putting it here." Yeah, there.
I thought that was a joke. That's real.
No,
that's for real.
At least the ones in Salt Lake.
And let's be clear, this one's
benefit. Most atrocious because each of those boxes is a different antenna. So this one's, and ones.
But some of those are for the
ones in Kim's neighborhood won't have quite as many of those on it.
This is the Link NYC though, which is for public benefit as well, right? There's free Wi-Fi and stuff like that. So,
stuff in it, right?
Yeah, I mean, so like in theory, the city negotiated this for the benefit.
Oh no, someone at the city goes, by the way, can you make room for my stuff too? So yes,
Huh.
that's a city choice.
And these
Well,
are
the city
every
now. The
block
city
or
can't
two?
complain about the way they look. So
These are
What's that, Travis?
these are every couple blocks.
I believe they will be if they're not currently.
not too far apart.
Yeah.
Because these are small cells, so they don't really handle a lot of people for site.
Well, the thing that would make this better is what I thought Link NYC was doing, which is advertising on them too, digital displays with local advertising.
Well, those were the kiosks at the bottom. They don't have as many of those as they used to.
Okay.
They literally had a two-sided sandwich board at the bottom that had giant tubes in them. And what they found out was all the homeless people were watching porn on the city street with giant size. So they had some problems.
Some things are better shared with your neighbors. Go ahead.
Do they tell ACP what they're using on their cell phones to get
Anything else that we want to touch on before we run out?
Well, I think Shayna has this LA thing nailed. I'd be curious to hear from her someday why nobody's ever overbuilt the incumbent that's there.
Well,
seems like there's
folks
a lot of money out there to be made.
I think there is. I think it's been. I think a lot of people find it frustrating operating with the California rules. It does, in particular, the issue around a private right of action for certain reviewing. Although I don't know that telecommunications is in that. So, but Shayna has been on the show in the past and will be on again. Terrific voice, but working out there to help educate everyone from elected leaders down to the grassroots folks who are getting this stuff done. I think there is an interest, Travis, in bringing new blood to town. So if you want, you and I should spend some time there while you're down in that area over this winter.
In California?
Yeah, in Los Angeles.
Oh.
I don't think.
Can I fill out my loan application now? It fuels like $7 a gallon going there.
I don't think his RV can get that far.
So,
yeah, no.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to scale
many
back.
rules
I'm hoping that you're gonna be in the Phoenix area. At the end of January. We're gonna get you to San Antonio at the end of February. I got plans for you, Travis.
I was gonna say my vacation sounds awfully busy, so I don't know. It just seems like if you could build out in a huge metro area like LA, there'd be a lot of opportunity there for you.
I think there's these thing called lobbyists. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Yeah. There's a lot of rules in California, and the AT&T and the cable companies own the legislature. Yeah, there's some real
but hold on, you just so we couldn't go in there, and
you can absolutely overbuild privately. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So Mitchell Internet could open up in LA, and we get some funds, and we start digging down the street, huh?
We should probably
as long as the ads don't have his face on it, because he looks like a Midwesterner.
Here's what we do. Oh, and I could put hair gel in my hair. It changes me real quick. Okay. Travis, when you're down there, we'll just you don't have to drive over. We'll just hop you on a quick flight or something and pop you over for a couple days.
I just can't believe if LA of all places, like New York, LA, Chicago, if they can't be done. I mean, I wonder why. What's holding people back? I don't think it's a can't be done.
There's no one who has spent the money yet. That's really that simple. Yeah.
But I also think that, like, to the extent that there have been like policy issues, I think there's a lot of effort in wanting to remove those now. Mm-hmm. If there has been a government limitations.
Mm-hmm. Team UTOPIA LA version. I'm feeling it.
Thanks, Travis.
Yeah, let's add one more county to your California list, Kim.
No, I think we're good.
Okay, I did want to ask you, Kim. It's been a few weeks without an announcement. Is the well run dry? Does no one want to work with you anymore?
Oh no, we have one that's coming out this week. Don't you worry.
I'm excited to hear it.
I'm actually in our PR team's office right now, and I'm going to go out there and yell at him. Why isn't it out yet? Right now.
You're in Bob's office?
I'm in Bob's office.
Why didn't you say we should have had him on?
We don't want Bob in there. He's like actually working. No, I don't.
Well, in that case, can you get photographic evidence? I've never seen that.
Okay, I will get photographic evidence. Well, go ahead, Travis.
Did you start construction up in Bozeman yet?
Oh, we have customers up in Bozeman.
Well done.
Wow. Well done.
We have quite a few customers. We are hitting the winter season. It was 18 degrees. So the ground freezing is slowing down some of the boring, and we're going to the aerial for the winter. So it's buckle up, people in Bozeman. It's cold up there, and It's going to be a long winter, but we got quite a bit of conduit in the ground, and we started doing drops for some of the areas that the main line hadn't been finished yet, just so we could continue to do those installs during the winter. So
All right, let's go out to LA then, and let's help Shayna get some people hooked up. What do you think?
Shayna, we're coming.
Yep.
And Fairlawn, Ohio today announced that they are changing their rate structure. Same basic price of $55 a month for the standard tier, but now gigabit rather than 300 megabit symmetrical, I think. They have like 63% of the town is using it. So when you hear people talking about all these cities failing, just check out some facts, because that's remarkable at Fairlawn. And Fairlawn does not have a municipal electric utility, so kudos to them.
And I want to get this fact out there. So even on the first customers that are coming on to connect over there, we're seeing 70% of the Bozeman area people connecting to 1 gig. They're choosing 1 gig over 250 symmetrical, and their other options 10 gig. But the uptake, when you give people the choice, they pick for higher speeds. And
what's the rate?
The rate's like 75. So
that's awesome. I think the $55 a month for a gig, it's got to be like, I got to think there's fewer than 10 of those that I'm familiar with around the country. $70 still seems like a common bar, right? Usually the gig is 70 or more, I think.
Yeah.
$100, Chris. $100 now. It's here.
Travis, I will pay you $200 a month. I'm going to up my ante. Just bring it to my house. Does that change the books at all? No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, St. Paul. We're gonna see. We're across the river, Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, but was he going to pay you the second month, Travis? That's what.
Well, yeah. The bank won't take chicken wings. I already asked.
Oh, and I have a photo. We'll have to save that for a peekaboo. But a fan of our show in Holland and I grabbed some wings, so we did have some wing talk. This is going to continue forever if I don't just draw it to a close. I think in 2 weeks it's like in 2 weeks it's not Thanksgiving yet. We'll hopefully have a show before Thanksgiving. And I was thinking, should we get a show like a December 15th or something like that, like a show like year in review and next year in preview, and try to really hype it and actually have more than 4 viewers?
I might have to wear my Santa suit.
Hey,
this is our biggest show ever.
This is the biggest ever, but by a long shot. Yeah.
Well, it's certainly the most active groom. I mean, it makes me want to work on Tuesdays more. I'll tell you that. Like, wonderful job.
Probably good. Yeah. So.
Well, okay, but Chris, I did not win the Powerball. So now I need something to bet with you on for next year, so I can win something again.
Did anyone win yesterday?
Somebody out in California. So there's plenty. You know what? I'd like to congratulate the state of California and the IRS on winning the Powerball today. Yeah. Yep. State of California just got like what did they get? 100 million?
Oh, probably 400 million. Yeah.
400 million out of this. So there should be plenty of cash.
Wouldn't it depend on whether they take the payout all at once or the recurring?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful to see you all, and sorry I didn't have enough rants, but I'll work on that for next time, and I'll try and keep my language down. Trying to prevent that from spoiling anyone's afternoon.
Well, I have final last words from me. I would like to thank everyone for this latest episode of Flower Talk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're not big tulip fans. We're not big tulip fans around here.
Apparently not.
Yeah, get out there and plant those bulbs. You're running out of time. And we will see you all in 2 weeks, hopefully. And that has been another wonderful episode of Connect This.